Thank you. Thanks for giving me the time to tell the story of what has been happening in Hong Kong. I'm an architect in private practice. I was kind of born and bred in Hong Kong, and my hometown is Hong Kong. Today, I want to tell the story of the resourcefulness, the talent in the Hong Kong community and the Hong Kong urban genius. And personally, I actually find that an extraordinary story and a great discovery that is kind of waiting to be exploited by people involved in kind of urbanism in many other parts of the world. So I would kind of go through three stories today. Now this is the picture postcard view of Hong Kong, and as we all know, behind the picture postcard view, the reality is very often very high density, very abrupt intervention, and maybe even kind of insensitive intervention in the urban fabric. And whether in life or in death, we live in an extremely crowded environment. And it is very often so oppressive that people might kind of even kind of go mad in it. And we are all living at the limit. But in fact, very often, in this kind of environment, we see extraordinary kind of flowering of urban genius. This is an example of a back alley, people kind of turning that into a wonderful cafe, kind of alley cafe with arts and planting and all kind. And we are all familiar with what happened on the ground floor of the HSBC on Sundays when the Filipino helpers would turn that momentarily into a wonderful carnival. Now, for the last few years, people have not been very happy. In fact, the mood is sombered. And it's not difficult to understand why. We tried to do a very simple kind of calculation. This is 20 years ago, in 1994. If you put everything at kind of 100 basis point, now 20 years later, the GDP has gone up to there, but then our median monthly income is only there. It hasn't really gone up. And then the property price of non-luxury residential has actually gone up to there. So no wonder we're not happy. But that is also reflected in some of the kind of outdoor activities happening in Hong Kong. This is the Hong Kong Police public order event statistics. It's all the street activities, protests and all that from 2005 to 2014. You can see the kind of trajectory of public events. And of course, the kind of the so-called kind of umbrella movement. So one of the things we tried to do in the last few years is an urban research and action research program called Urban Diary. What we have been doing is just to go around Hong Kong and talk to people and find story of how people actually live a life that has some implication on where the city would go and how we can actually live a life in the city. So throughout the last few years, we have interviewed hundreds of people. That includes young people who would do kind of urban graffitis. You see a lot of wonderful graffitis happening on the streets like Hollywood Road and so on. You can also see new immigrant who comes down to Hong Kong, but also work as a kind of cultural tourism docent for community organization like Sao Ping. We also have stories of poets, urban poets in Hong Kong, people who do kind of all kinds of things. This is a group of people. Every year they organize the Hungry Ghost Festival event when they would burn offering to the hungry ghosts so that everyone else in the city would be okay. So they're doing good. And they've been doing that every year in the kind of Staunton Street area. They have a Mang Lan Sing Hui organization. Now, why they do it, how they relate to the city. Now, all these human stories need to be known. I really feel that they should tell us why are they doing this? How do they organize it? How do they relate to the city? Like this computer scientist and his wife, who used to be a lawyer, is now doing wonderful organic farming in Hong Kong, and actually quite successful. And the wife is actually running a clothes exchange website, and that's also very successful. Now, why do they do it? What kind of space, what kind of urban environment would they need to do what they want to do? This is actually quite well known now. Yeah, keeping bees in the center of Kwun Tong or Mong Kok and producing honey in the industrial area of Kowloon. And what we do is we turn many of those stories into kind of short articles, and we put it on the website and a blog so that people can see. We also make films about many of these people, 10, 20 minutes film, and then put it on YouTube and so on. This is the story of Sao Ping. Yeah. And then we do kind of open air screening so that people in Wan Chai can come to the street theater or street cinema and watch the video of many of these people. We also organize these people to do workshops. For example, one group of people is the organic farmer in the Nam Chung. They produce organic lotus, but also organic ginger. So the ginger is utilized by the new immigrant women in Wan Chai to make organic gingerbread. So we do gingerbread workshop using local ginger made by local farmer, and then people start kind of doing gingerbread man in these 本地薑餅工作坊. Yeah. Now, many of these stories are now beginning to be accessible on mobile application. We work with mobile application developer, people such as Urban Discovery. We dig up stories of places like Aberdeen, the old stories. So put the whole thing on a mobile app so that people can go to different parts of Hong Kong, like Aberdeen, and see the story of the people who actually lived there. So they do not just see the building, they do not just go and sample the shops and the restaurants and the cafe, but they also start to understand the story of people actually living in the district. And through storytelling about people, we start to fill in the void that kind of quantitative planning and also kind of abstraction cannot fill in, because people are real, they are kind of blood and flesh. So in fact, we are launching the Urban Discovery mobile application of Aberdeen very soon. So you can download the mobile apps. Now then, we also ask, now, in fact, apart from people telling us story, can people tell story themselves? Now, how do people tell story? Not everyone can kind of stand up and tell the story. Some can. But everyone can do something. You can sing, other people can draw, other people can beat the drum or just the bucket or anything you like. Now that's actually a way of telling story. So we walk around Hong Kong and we found that there are a lot of kind of public spaces everywhere. And we started this thing called Very Hong Kong. In fact, Maggie Brooke and I kind of had this idea several years ago, and we said, well, why don't we take a space, like under the flyover, in Kwun Tong, and then we asked the government whether you can let us play with it for a weekend, and the government says, yeah, go along, go ahead, don't worry, just use it, and then we then just put the whole thing onto the Facebook, and we said, now we've got the place to ourselves for a weekend. What do you want to do with it? Can you just come and do something? And then we get hundreds of responses. We got all kinds of people saying, I want to beat the drum. Other people actually say, I want to beat the water bucket, the plastic bucket. Other people say, I want to play classical piano and then show other people how to do it. So all these things started to happen. And then thousands of people actually turn up. And they do all kinds of things like playing the classical piano under the flyover. Here, or this one, actually play the classical bassoon under the flyover. And then kids can actually learn and find out kind of what this kind of big pipe is all about, and then play with it as well. Or other people do other things such as kind of using leather to make purses, to make all kinds of things. Now, so all these are things that people do. We don't charge anyone any money. We don't pay anyone any money. Everything is done on a kind of pro bono basis. Everyone is a volunteer. But then thousands of people actually get involved and do things together and then tell story to each other. Now then, we also, at the time, also working on the Star Street improvement project in an old part of Hong Kong that we did a pop-up store for about 2 weeks and then asked people how they want the part of Hong Kong in Star Street to be in the next 5 years. And then we kind of collected a lot of these responses and we analyzed them. And then basically the thing they told us was, well, we don't actually want Star Street to become a Pacific Place. Just please don't ruin the place. We actually like the way it is. So we said, okay, fine, let's try to do something so that we can allow people to use it. But really, what is the issue? They say, well, climbing up the stairs is an issue. So let's improve the stair. We did that. And then we said, some people said that they actually want to have places that elderly people and younger people can, well, very small kids can make use of. So following the advice, we started doing some of the improvement work in the area. Also, we worked with a historian, Jason Worthy, to take up the story of the district and then put the story in the public spaces. But the idea is, then we put the whole thing onto the Facebook and say, well, do you want to do something about it? Do you want to do something in it if I give the space to you for a Saturday? Then again, thousands of people actually turn up. Now, what is interesting about this group is that this is actually the Hong Kong Instagram group. Now, we were taught 10, 20 years ago that the non-space urban realm would be the thing of the future, and therefore everyone would be interacting kind of over there, and therefore people don't need urban spaces, the traditional urban spaces. Now, what we find again and again is actually the opposite. Now, the Instagram group has 10,000 members in Hong Kong, but they would love to have physical spaces that we can put up as a kind of pop-up exhibition, and all the Instagrammers would come and exhibit in a physical space and then show each other what they do. Now, this is actually how the non-space community and space can actually work together. And we actually find them probably one of the most enthusiastic users of physical spaces. But we also have other people, I mean this lot actually beat the buckets, and the kind of water drums and so on, and doing that on the street. So other people do other things, kids draws, and people bring their families and the kids here, and then they sing. Now, these are not professional singers. They're all kind of people just turn up, and then they decide to kind of wear caps and then start singing. Students, fashion students, start doing fashion show just on the street, on kind of Moon Street. And then we close the street for a Saturday afternoon. And these are all kind of designed by students, and they want to show the fashion. And fashion models actually came and said to us, well, we want to do it for you on a pro bono basis. So these models are professional models, but then they do it on a kind of voluntary basis. And then the shops around the place actually give the space for the models to get changed, and then they serve the model champagne and all that. So everyone actually do all these things on a voluntary basis. Now, this is Wan Chai Pier. It was going to be demolished, and before they demolish it, we said to them, well, why don't you give it to us for a weekend so we can wreck it before you wreck it? And they said, okay, yeah. And then we did things. Again, thousands of people turned up and do all kinds of things in the Wan Chai, the last night on Wan Chai Ferry Pier before demolition. Actually, this happened 4 months before the so-called umbrella movement. It actually happened in July, but you actually get a feel about what's happening in Hong Kong by really working with people and allowing people to bubble up without any censor whatsoever. Now, our next event would happen in 2 weeks' time. It's called 非常香港仔, very Aberdeen. It will happen in Aberdeen by the waterfront, by the tank-car fishermen's shelter, and there would be over 30 groups of all kinds of people telling their story, doing all kinds of things. It would happen on a Sunday, on the 15th of May. Yeah, these are all the things. The last story is Blue House. We all know about the history of Blue House, how it relates to Wang Fei Hong and his descendants. Now, the interesting thing about the Blue House is that it is the first consortium, urban development non-profit consortium in Hong Kong. It is formed by 4 groups: St. James's Settlement, Heritage Hong Kong, Cultural Concern, and also the local residents, forming a consortium to do urban development. The whole thing is a charitable non-profit urban development consortium. And the idea is to build a community. In fact, in the center is the Good Neighbor Scheme. So people who live in it are not just tenants, but they're also members of the Good Neighbors, and they contribute. And then the local, I have to go back to that. It seems I can't get back to that slide. Yep, got that. Now, this slide is important. That's why I want to. There are actually 3 layers. It's like an onion. Yeah, in the center is the good neighbor, and then the second layer is the local community. There are a number of activities and action that actually work with the local community, such as the time voucher scheme, and also the local residents self-help organization. And then the third layer is the House of Story. It's to tell the story to the community. You can see all these various layers of things happening at the same time. The House of Story is actually a way to curate and tell the story of the city from a bottom-up basis. Now, most of the museums are curated by the professionals, and they usually represent the agenda of either the establishment or the professional viewpoint. Now, what is missing is actually the people's viewpoint. So the House of Story is actually a storytelling process that tells the story from the point of view of the real people who actually live in Wan Chai. The gingerbread workshop, all kinds of things. and the time voucher scheme. We have two very good architects helping us on this, LWK and Metaphor, transforming the urban spaces inside and doing the architectural conservation work. We've just got OP for the first phase, so we would do a soft opening in the next few weeks. But continuously, we work with the local residents. I mean, this is occupying half the street for our Mid-Autumn Festival feast. This man has been living there, he's about 90. He's been living there since he was 10. So he lived there for almost kind of 80 years. He grew up there, he went to the school that used to exist on the first and second floor of the Blue House. He is literally living heritage. Now, lastly, this is the last slide. This is a photograph of Hong Kong by Ho Fan many years ago. And I think this actually shows the urban genius of Hong Kong. This shows how we have always had that in us. How we make use of the city, how we make use of the different levels of the city, and the aesthetic of it, the way we make use of the steps is almost like a dance, kind of quoting kind of Jane Jacob. And living in city is actually a very important life skill. It is not something that is born naturally. It is something that needs to be nurtured. And city living, city making, contributing to city is probably the most important life skill and craft we need to acquire as urbanization becoming more and more prevalent in this part of the world. So I think it is in that area that Hong Kong has a lot to contribute to many other Asian cities. I think we are the only people who have been living in such high density, high efficiency, high productivity, and yet be able to develop a way of life that is truly pleasurable, aesthetically, actually very exciting, but at the same time, making the city very, very livable. So I think on that note, I want to recommend to you to trust the citizenry of Hong Kong and also allow the urban genius of Hong Kong to contribute not only to our city, but also to contribute to urbanism all over Southeast Asia. Thank you.